Alright. Fading in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good morning. Welcome to Body Talk. I'm Aylwyn Bridges, and today is a wonderful day. We're also in Heart Month, which is part of February. And for you wonderful ladies out there, next week is Valentine's Day. Stay tuned to Body Talk. We're coming from No Static Radio. If you would like to participate in the conversation, please call area code 216-939-5087. That's area code 216-939-5087. Or if you would like to email a question and or a topic for a later program, the email address is bodytalkradioprogram@gmail.com. This is a program that inspires you to think. We bring dynamic people on. We have one dynamic guest this morning. I'll introduce him in just a hot second. It's a program that encourages you to think, learn, and discern. This morning in the studio, we have a gentleman that I consider not only one of the jewels of Cleveland, he's a diamond. He's not a diamond in the rough. He is the diamond. Mr. Fred Ward, he's the studio audience is alive and well this morning. He's the CEO of the New Move Foundation, and I'm sorry, Fred, if I mispronounced it. And what I'm going to do is turn to Fred. Fred, good morning to you.
Good morning. How you doing?
I'm fine. First off, Fred, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from?
Yeah. Okay. So, lifelong Clevelander. I was born in the midst of the '68 riots over on Superior. I had to uproot because tanks was coming down the street. I ended up moving over on Cedar Avenue. I grew up on Cedar, went to Bolton Elementary, Gallagher Junior High. Then through marriage and other things, I ended up moving over on 105, actually next door to one of the Bone Thug and Harmony members. So I graduated from Lincoln West, and then I guess my journey began.
Your journey is actually just started. Fred, tell us about the foundation.
Yeah, so, I did a 10-year of incarceration, directly led from the trauma I experienced as a child. But within that 10-year of education inside what we call the belly of the beast, I ran across some learning about ancient Egypt. And it was a story in there about a god named Khnemu. And Khnemu controlled the Nile River. And what I found very interesting about this story was that it had said that, and even in the Bible, it's a thing about the 7-year famine. But from the ancient Egyptian perspective, which probably was 2,000-3,000 years before the Bible was even written, it was talking about how the people had forgot about God and how they had, started turning in on themselves. So because they had forgot about God and identifying with God, He dried up the Nile River. And so it got so bad that the storehouses of grain had emptied. People was too weak to move. People was eating their kids, older people. It was just what I like to say we see today. And so the Pharaoh had, he called one of the scribes and was like, man, who controlled the Nile River? He told him, the god Khnemu. He went to the god Khnemu like, hey, man, we starving. We in turmoil. And God Khnemu responded and said, y'all forgot about me. Y'all forget, look at my temple. Look at my shrine. The pillars is falling over. The roots is growing. And so, long story short, he realized his mistake in putting God first in his life and in their lives. And so they recommitted to being committed to God and offering a tenth for whatever they did. And God freed up that Nile River.
Okay, you're listening to Body Talk on No Static Radio. If you have questions for Fred Ward, you can please call in at area code 216-939-5087. Or if you prefer to email the questions to Fred and I, it's bodytalkradioprogram@gmail.com. Fred, how long has the foundation been in existence?
Man, it seems like what with funding, without funding, as a thought. Shit.
Well, let's take it from birth to what is it? Is it a toddler now, a teenager?
Yeah, it's still an infant. It's still an infant. The foundation started off as a concept, just a need that sprung out of, needing to get closer to where the problems was at in our city. And so we started down on 105 in Glenville area, just as a storefront to like bring information to those that just was unaware of like what's going on in the world and how they can actually navigate through it. It was a beautiful experience because what happened without funding, it allowed regular folks to just do what they could, and we was quite successful with that, to the point where we got to like 17 programs a week on everything. We created a program when they passed the law that children couldn't graduate if they didn't pass the third grade reading equivalency. So we created a reading program. Our thing is problem solution. So if we seen a problem, we tried to address it in the way in which we could.
So let's back up for a minute. You mentioned funding. Did you receive any grants or public funding from the city, the state, the federal?
Well, now I do, and it's been it's been a long road, but I can say the Cleveland Foundation has been a champion for our organization. United Black Fund, as they held our hand and walked us through our most infantile stages of development, gave us not only financial support, but also gave us brilliant minds to help us think through and navigate like a long-term strategy. So, United Black Fund, I would definitely raise up. Cleveland Foundation, and Ohio Organizing Collaborative, which has been like a lifelong partner of ours.
Well, just for the listeners who are outside of the Cleveland area, and also inside of Cleveland, what is the Cleveland Black Fund?
The Cleveland Black Fund?
Mm-hmm.
United Black Fund?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that United Black Fund is an awesome organization that, help different groups, programs. Sometimes they have nonprofits to really like get their stuff off the ground, and allow them to think through some of the problems in Cleveland. Cecil Lipskin, I know he's executive director, but Celeste, they're amazing.
Okay, you mentioned that one of your programs was to help CMSD students who were struggling or needed help to pass the third grade reading equivalency exam. What other programs do you have?
Oh man, so we done did a little bit of everything, but right now I focus on like civic education and mental health, trauma-informed care. Those are our two biggest, and mentoring. So our three main buckets right now is trauma-informed learning, mentoring at-risk youth, as well as those that have coming in and out of the juvenile system, and gangs. We have a heavy focus on trying to work with them, and civic education, because we realize that at the end of the day, it's all about power.
Okay, let's take a soft stop. When you say civic education,
Yeah.
What do you mean by civic education?
Understanding systems, understanding that power comes in many forms, understanding that civic life is one form to, respond to power.
Okay.
Yeah, and how to do that, how to come from being powerless to an agent of change in your own community.
So let's just do, I don't want to say a role play, let's assume we're talking about a family member or a group, a cultural group who doesn't understand. Do you encourage them also to participate in the voting process? Does that give them power, or are you talking about a seizure problem? I'm not talking about some armed rally.
Right. So voting is a strategy. I would definitely encourage people to vote because people in power want one thing, and that's to stay in power. And in the civic arena, voting is one of the mechanisms used to keep people in power that serve your interests and get people out there dumb.
Okay. So this is more of a personal question, but if it relates to your foundation, that's fine. So looking at the voting issue, do you believe personally in term limits, or should whoever serve for the rest of their life?
Well, serve is a very interesting term. Serve who?
Serve the
Self-serve or self-serve the people. If you serving the people, you can stay as long as you want to. But the problem is that a lot of times you come in as a public servant and then you turn into a politician, you know, and you start serving yourself or, you know what I'm saying, constituencies that's outside of, you understand, the best interests of the people. And for that, you need to be uprooted.
Okay. So without a law that says term limits, how do we uproot Mr. or Mrs. Bad Politician?
Easy. See how many votes it takes to get them out. And also see their track record and decide for yourself whether they in alignment with what you want to see for your city, your state, your county, your neighborhood. And if not, then understand that you have an inalienable right to act.
Correct. Okay. Prior to going on the air, we had a conversation, and we mentioned, or you mentioned, the Inner City Club.
Yeah.
What is the Inner City Club?
That's interesting. Yeah. Because today I seen Key Bank. Key Bank, they just gave away like $1.2 million to like 10 organizations. And the City Club was mentioned on that. And I like the City Club. I've been there. And, you know, they had great lunch, and a lot of times the presentations be very, matter of fact, I'm on my way there on the 15th, secure, talking about some stuff. But as a counter to that, I asked a lot of community members to have a pulse on the ground, and that's connected to the pain and the solutions of the pain. And I said, man, you're at the City Club, they don't know about the City Club. They have not a clue. And so again, thinking problem solution, I'm like, wow, well, you valuable. You got influence in these neighborhoods. We should create the Inner City Club of Greater Cleveland as a segue to also have lunch and serious dialogue about the accountability and responsibility that we owe to our city and to those that have been elected to serve the city, right? And so I think that it's not a city club or us. I think it's a city club and us, right? And that's democracy for me.
Okay, so just real quick, Fred, we're on Body Talk Live program on No Static Radio. If you have a question for Mr. Ward, please feel free to call area code 216-939-5087. Just from your foundation perspective, just for a minute, put your foundation hat back on, and we'll go back and forth on some other topics here. If I wanted to donate money to you, how would I do that? How do I get in touch with you?
You can go to our website, or you can call, you know, or you can walk in.
Well, okay, first off, give everybody your phone number, the phone number to the foundation.
Oh, man, I gotta look that up. I don't want to call it my personal.
Well, what's the address of the foundation?
It's 966 East 105th Street, Cleveland, Ohio, 44108. So, yeah. And the phone number is...
And while you're looking that up, Fred, I don't blame you.
I got it.
Okay, go ahead.
It's 216-417-2743. Yeah, 216-417-2743.
The address is 966 of the foundation, excuse me. The address is 966 East 105th Street, zip code 44108. The phone number to talk with the CEO, that's Fred Ward, is area code 216-417-2743. What are the hours of the foundation if I just wanted to walk in there today?
Oh, we be open at 8 o'clock to like 5 o'clock regular, but then we also do meetings like 5:30 to 7 on particular days. And on Sunday we do a kinetic science class from 2 to 4.
And what is the kinetic science class for the listener?
Yeah, it's a spiritual system of ancient Egyptian culture.
Mm-hmm.
It's really connected and grounded with like Maya
Mm-hmm.
studies.
Okay. Just, and you mentioned that you do trauma-informed learning.
Yeah.
Why, what is that and why is that important?
Oh man, it's some research that came out not long ago. A doctor named Nadine Burke actually spearheaded this information. But they did Kaiser Permanente did a study about, and they came up with this thing called adverse childhood experiences. And, and it was done with like a middle class white professional group. And they found that the trauma that they had experienced in their childhood was so severe that it could not only reshape how the brain functioned, but also cause, certain physical complications in life. And when I read that, I was like, wow, if this is the case for a middle class white community, what would happen if I put this ACEs test in the inner city neighborhoods? And as I thought, so they say if you're two or more, it's 10 questions that kind of summarize this adverse child experiences. And if you score two or more, they saying that trauma is enough to affect not only the reshaping of your brain function, but also create serious complications in life medically.
Well, interestingly enough, when I'll give
Okay.
you her contact number, I'm going to have a guest on the show. Her
Okay.
name is Rashonda Jackson.
Okay.
And she primarily trains and does workshops with children and adults on trauma and crisis. So remind me to give you
I
her
need
contact.
that. Yeah, I was a 9 out of 10. I got buddies. I had leaders of the Heartless Fellas that was like an 8 and 9. But what was more amazing than anything, I just had a 42-year-old man. We're doing a summit in Cleveland Clinic coming up on the 23rd. And I'm talking to one of my guys. I'm telling him how, some of the trauma that I experienced when I was a kid. And I had been around this guy, right, for a while. I'm like, I must have didn't do a real one-to-one. And what he revealed to me was that, when he was 12 years old, mother broke his arm, cracked his ribs, sent him to school. They ended up arresting her and blah, 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 put him in foster care. But he had never questioned it. He was so impacted by the realization that could have affected his life and how he thought and moved forward in the world that he called his brother. He said, man, I'm talking to Mr. Ward, man. Man, tell Mr. Ward about our mama. And he was like, oh, man, mama brutal. Mama vicious. Mama. But what was so striking for me was that he, we take things that are unnatural and make them normal.
That's correct.
You see? And so it creates a numbness, right? So when somebody say they're a heartless fella, I understand you numb. And then it's the question of why, not what, that's why a lot of times when it comes to like violence intervention and prevention, I take the public health approach versus the public safety because I understand that happened, but I want to know why, you see. And what I found is that they never question the type of impact those traumatic experiences in their life has had on them.
And that's an interesting theory and it's a fact. And let's drill down for just a second. How does that affect black men?
How does it affect black men? Toxic masculinity, numbness, inability to feel and be vulnerable. It crushes relationships with our family and loved ones and spouses. All right?
Okay.
Shall I continue?
Yes, go ahead.
It creates, you understand, hurt people. Right? Deliberate attempt to respond to society in the way in which society has responded to them.
So how can we as black men help other black men recover from that or begin to recover?
Well, I talk in first person. How do I do it? I make myself vulnerable. I don't let my strength be defined based on my inability to feel and be vulnerable to other black men, you know?
So that statement, if I may go back way when we were small, men don't cry.
Yeah. We gotta unlearn a lot of things.
Correct. So you mentioned the Cleveland Clinic on the 23rd of this month. What happens at the Cleveland Clinic on the 23rd?
So Cleveland Clinic, big, gigantic thought leader. And for the life of me, I've been trying to figure out how do we infuse small grassroots organizations with a direct pulse on the people. How do we integrate them into these systems? It's been exceedingly difficult. And so my attempt, so within our foundation we have another subcategory called FACTS. Okay. And FACTS is an acronym for Faith and Community Together Serving. Under the mentorship of Pastor Rowan, who I love dearly, at Bethany Baptist Church, that whole community has grounded me in a different spiritual way. But we created this because working with Peacemakers Alliance and other systems, I realized that the faith community, right, and the community has an intimate relationship that needs to constantly be reinforced.
Now you mentioned, and I'm not going to pick on Bethany. I think Pastor Ron is a great guy.
You better not pick on Bethany on this interview.
No, I'm not going to do that. I know better because you're bigger than me.
Yeah.
One of the things that I have studied, researched, and all that other good academic stuff is the role of the black church in the black community. At one juncture in time, the black church was the most important institution in the black community.
We'll send a shout out to the AME church then.
Most definitely.
Freedom.
Yeah. So at what point are we going to come back? Is the black church going to again accept that role of being that institution, that power broker? Use your term, the power broker.
Well, I think that there's no sense of moving into the future if we're gonna expect the same remnants of the past to be the guiding forces of our reality. I think that the black church at the time it was that anchor, was supposed to be. But I think that based on how life has evolved, that the church still plays a significant role, but there are other aspects of the black community that need to partnership and collaborate within that. I don't think it's the sole responsibility of the black church, but I do think they got a role.
Okay, you're listening to Body Talk on No Static Radio. If you'd like to call or make a comment or ask questions to Mr. Ward or myself, it's area code 216-939-5087. When you say partnership, so let's go back to this trauma piece for a minute.
Okay.
That encompasses the black female, the black woman.
And male.
All of us have been traumatized.
Well,
to a degree.
All is a deep word, but I would assume a large majority.
A large majority of us have been traumatized. All is all encompassing. Right. How do we come together? As you said, hurt people can't help hurt people.
Levels of toxicity. They think they can. But so I think that we got a lot of work to do. This ain't, it ain't happening overnight. To get us in this state of degradation and despair, and it ain't gonna happen overnight getting up out of here. I think the first thing we have to be is be honest. We gotta be honest with each other.
Now, when you say honest, what do you mean by honest?
I mean, tell the truth. Speak your truth and speak it in the terms of this is yours and not ours. Right? All black men, some black men scared of strong black men.
True.
I'm trying to reach, I might as well use your airtime to reach out to 100 black men that in their national bylaws don't allow people with felony convictions, you understand, to mentor. I want to mentor. I never forget one time. I was at Urban League, And I sat there for about 2-3 hours. I wrote a book too. And I was sitting up here because I wanted to help. I was volunteering to read to these middle school kids. And I sat there for 2-3 hours, and at the end, it was like, oh, if you got a felony, you can't participate in this program. I was crushed. Now, don't get me wrong. I understand that some felonies will exclude you from participating with youth. I'm not a fool.
For example, pedophile.
Yeah, absolutely. Put a name on it. But I got a felonious assault. And it behooved me that would be part of 100 black men, because we know the history of the black man has been a clear target. You understand? Slavery ain't abolished. They reframed it for those that have been duly convicted of a felony. So the mere fact of that, historically, would make me think that 100 black men would not have that as, you understand, a part of their national constitution.
And part of that, and I agree with you, Fred, I understand the exclusion of certain well, that's why I invited you, Fred, to be here, not to talk mess, but to stir up trouble.
No, I want to bridge relationships. I need 100 black men with these other 1,000 black men that I got.
Well, see, if because of your background, you're successful. You would be a good mentor for that young man or young lady, in some instances, to sit there and say, this is what happened to me, but now look what I'm doing.
But we get collateral sanctions. You familiar with collateral sanctions?
Yes, sir. But you explain it to the audience.
Because the audience don't know. I ask a lot of people about collateral sanctions. Is the barriers that a person faces once they catch a felony. It lasts for the rest of their life. There's over 1,500 in Ohio. Can't be a nurse. Can't get certain certifications. Can't get certain licenses. Can't be a mentor, right? Can't be a community health worker because you got a felony. And it's on and on and on.
Well, interestingly enough, we're on the Body Talk Live radio program on No Static Radio. You can reach us at area code 216-939-5087. And we're here with Mr. Fred Ward, author and community leader.
I'm working on a second book right now.
Well, what's your first book title?
My first book is called Degrees of Understanding.
And what was that about?
It's a memoir. True story, memoir. My second book, you're going to love this one. It's called The Loss of American Citizenship, A Journey Back to Slavery for the Convicted. I can't wait to let that one out. I'm trying to get it out this year.
Okay, and please inform us, let me know.
I will.
We'll keep in touch. Let's take a step backwards here for a minute. Okay. What role are you playing on the 23rd of February at the Cleveland?
Active role. You know, so I'm telling you, one of the breakout sessions that I'm gonna be a part of is how to bridge the gap between grassroots organizations and licensed professionals. That soft handoff, right? Thinking through that, right? Because more often than not, you have people that have relationships with people that have mental challenges, but we don't have access to a licensed, trusted professional. And a lot of times trauma is more than in the home. You got community trauma, and you also got institutional trauma. When a person come in for help and get treated like a dog, or like they begging, to get services that in your bylaws was set for you to do. So it's layers to this. It's more than an hour show.
Most definitely, and I'm going to have you back.
No,
if I have to, or we can arrange to have you come back at least once a month.
You got to give me some of the. You ain't offer me none of that German chocolate cake you got sitting over there.
You can take whatever you want.
Okay. I might come back then.
I always have good goodies, if I may, for my guests.
Right.
The one question, see, you're using terms that maybe some people aren't familiar with.
Oh.
You're using these, 2-syllable terms: system, systematic, institutions.
Oh.
See, when some people hear institutions, they think of a penal institution.
I do too.
Okay. Institutions can be what? Also,
it's hospital systems, government, nonprofit, philanthropic. Yeah.
So, in your role, leading this foundation, what is the biggest or largest obstacle you're facing?
So, funding these ideas that I challenge that will work. See, we got some concepts that we believe will work, that will reduce violence, that will reduce gang involvement, that will slow down the murder rate. But for the life of us, we can't get it funded. We ain't big enough.
Well, is it that you're not big enough, or is it that your ideas would work, and I don't want you to fund them? So, in essence, we're going to continue to exterminate ourselves.
I'm in many regards, I'm almost befuddled. That's why I got baptized in November, because I was like, I went as far as my rational mind can go. I need some high spiritual understanding for this, right? But let me mention. You talk about foundation and fund, the Fowler Foundation. I got to give them a shout out because they were the first organization to say, you know what, Fred, you're doing all this work and you got 2 jobs. They say, would you be willing to at least let one of the jobs go so that you can work more fully in your foundation? Man, I'm telling you, like, you know, foundations can do so much, right? And I just need to really give them like a high praise for like believing in the foundation, believing in the work that I'm trying to do, the work that I have done thus far, and to actually put financial support to that.
Speaking directly to your foundation, do you predominantly work with African American young men, young ladies, and older people? Or is it a culturally mixed group?
No. Because I focus on power so much, I can't afford to just work with black folks. Because I know the percentage and numbers of black folks in Ohio.
Yeah.
I need all people that struggle, right, from inequity and inequitable practices. White, black, you know, Latino, Latinx, you know, inside the penitentiary, outside state affairs.
Now I'm going to ask you again to give to the audience. How do I send you money? Who do we make the checks out to? Or how do we walk in and hand you an envelope with 200, 500, or whatever amount of money a community or an individual can give?
They can get in touch with us. They can call. They can send a letter. We got an email address too.
So
we got a website.
Okay. If you want to donate to Mr. Fred Ward's foundation and the wonderful work that he's doing and wants to do, continue to do in the community, please call area code 216-417-2743. I'm going to give the number again, area code 216-417-2743. Or you can mail a check, or you can walk in and donate directly to his office. Address is 966 East 105 Street, zip code 44108. You're listening to Body Talk on No Static Radio. If you would like to contribute to the discussion, please call 216-939-5087. Before we wrap up here, we have about, let's say, 7 to 10 minutes.
Okay.
What's your impression of the political process? If you want to share that with the audience.
Process? So, on what level? Political process goes so far. Locally? Local politics. Interesting. Oh, man. I think that, you know, I would like to see more engagement, you know, from the residents. But again, you know, if the residents don't see a clear win based on their participation, then they don't participate, which leads to other problems. You know, I would like to see, I don't know. You know, when I think about that, there's so much to think about, you know, as it relates to like local politics. You know, I've been watching. I watched them with the participatory budget. I watched City Council talk about that, and, you know, the role that they play as public servants or politicians. politicians, the mayor, with some of the initiatives he's trying to put down. I just think from a political standpoint, there need to be better avenues of engagement, right, with the right citizens on the ground. Because the old way of, putting out a memo, come to a community ward club meeting, and they don't. The same people go there. The people who already invested, they go. But the people who disconnected, they don't go. But I've seen something there about community engagement. I hope they don't get into an organization that can't reach the ground. I hope they start thinking more creatively about organizations that need greater support to do a different type of work. A lot of things that we've been participating in the city of Cleveland has just not worked or worked effectively enough, right? And I would hate to think that that is designed because they don't want to fix it. I would hate to think that. I refuse to. But we have to quit thinking status quo, business as usual, giving the money to the same people to do work that ain't been getting done.
Okay, now, I don't know if you've had a chance, you might have heard through the media about the mayor's 2023 budget. Mm-hmm. And there's been certain positions that are going to be unfunded this year, such as there's going to be 24 less EMS, emergency response people that drive the big green ambulances. Right. Approximately 140 less police officers.
Right.
Sometimes, and I'm not going to get into the comment of defund the police.
Right.
And I understand the difficulty in recruiting.
Yeah, very difficult.
It's very difficult. There's a lot of individuals who don't want to be police officers for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Pay, danger, etc.
Lack of support.
Lack of support,
yeah.
And so forth and so on. So, if you don't fund things, you lose things.
Yeah.
So, should the budget somewhat be reworked to add back or fund those 24? I'll just use the EMS.
Yeah. So, I'm not a financial guy, but I always think, I'm gonna give you an example, a real example. So I'm going to a meeting today where they asking for like $900-some thousand for like, workforce development and this and that for, youth and all that. And I'm like, we need more. Why do I say this? Because I have people that's working with average youth that's saying they need mentors. They need consistent mentors, which means that this is not big brother, big sister. This is a paid job because it's a full-time job.
Right.
To mentor youth with their family and maybe facilitate a relationship with the school. And I think out of, it was $511 million under Mayor Jackson's administration, half of that was gone, $200 and some million left. Without me being a financial guru, I think that there should be more money dedicated to violence intervention and prevention. I ain't talking about sending it to the police, right? They can get a piece. I like police officers on out the street. If I had my way, I'd give them more money. It's safer.
If I recall, the overall city budget for the safety forces represents 53% of the budget. Mm. Okay. Now, I agree with you. If you have a police presence, and let's make the world semi-perfect for a minute. Most police officers are good people. They're good. I know some too. And what's important, if you don't see that presence, mm-hmm. then that statement called law and order, mm-hmm. to have order, you got to have law enforcement.
Yeah. Presence is a little better than that camera.
Correct.
They still shooting it in front of them cameras.
And shot spotter, technology is great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And let's say instantaneously to tell the shots fired or whatever street, but you still have to have an officer respond to that scene. Yeah. Now, I'm going to go back to my federal days in budgeting. I'll be your financial guru.
Okay, come on.
What you don't fund, you don't support. Mm. It's simple.
Okay.
It's just like if you have a family, and you're supposed to go to the whatever grocery store and spend $100 to feed your family. If you don't go to the grocery store and spend the 100, you don't support it.
Makes sense to me.
So that's it. You're listening to Body Talk Live on No Static Radio. If you have a question or comment, please feel free to call at, area code 216-939-5087. We're here with Jewel of Cleveland, Mr. Fred Ward, CEO of the New Move Foundation. He is also an author. He also has a second book coming out. And I'm going to get ready to close here, Fred. Before I do, I want you to return.
Okay.
I want you to return. If we have to do this monthly.
I like the studio. You got good people in the audience. You know what I'm saying? They dress nice.
Yeah, we pay for them to clap too.
Okay.
I want you to return. So not only can you talk about the successes in your program, your foundation, but we can talk about other things whatever might come to your mind. But before we leave, I'm going to share the address of the Nemu Foundation. And you can reach out to Mr. Fred Ward. The address is 966 East 105 Street, zip code 44108. If you would like to talk to Fred directly, please feel free to get in contact with him. Leave a message. He will return your call. Trust me, he returns calls. Area code 216-417-2743. And Fred, I thank you for being a guest today on
It
Body
was my
Talk.
honor.
Thank you, Fred.
All right. Yeah, man.
Now, please, take what you want.
You got the, what you call it up there, man. So, what's your
Here we go.
Good afternoon and welcome back to Body Talk, where we encourage you to use your mind, body, and soul to discuss a variety of topics. You can reach us at area code 216-939-5087 to participate in the discussion and or to email your questions. In the studio this afternoon, I have probably a gentleman I've only known for less than, 50 some odd years. And he is not only an outstanding human being, he also is a jewel of the city of Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
I call Jeff Doggett the minister of all Cleveland sports. We'll talk some sports to get him warmed up, and we'll discuss some other topics. And the one thing that many of you who listen to No Static Radio, Jeff also has a program here on Saturdays from 3 to 5 called No Static Radio. So I also encourage you to listen to Jeff and participate in his program. Good afternoon, Minister Doggett.
Good afternoon, and just so you know, the check is in the mail for the kind words you said, and I'm honored to be a guest on your very first show here on No Static Radio. So.
Well, thank you, Jeff. It was due to your encouragement of you letting me serve as a guest host on your program and the urging of other people to actually start my radio show. But let's start off with some softball easy questions. First, if I may, the big monster in the Sportsville arena today is LeBron James is about to break Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's scoring record. Now, what's your thoughts on this accomplishment, and should it really be a highlight, or is it a low light, or is that really important?
Well, it's a highlight. I won't say it's the highlight of LeBron's career. I think the highlight of his career, and this is no personal bias involved in that at all, just what it accomplished. I think the greatest highlight of LeBron James' career was bringing the 2016 championship to Cleveland, being as the fact that they did it in a historic fashion, overcame a 3-1 deficit, which had never been done in the NBA Finals before. And oh, by the way, overcame it against the team that set the record for the most wins in the regular season. That was the 2015-2016 Golden State Warriors, who won 73 games. But as far as the scoring record is, it is a highlight. This is something that should be noted, is noteworthy. The fact that it is a testament that, LeBron James, 20 years into his career, is still playing at the high level that he is playing. It seems as though he's defied time. We always hear the expression that Father Time is undefeated, and that's true. You don't believe that, just ask Tom Brady. But LeBron is playing at a level now that just defies logic for somebody who has played as long as he has, played the position that he has, played as many playoff games as he has. That's another season in itself, the number of playoff games that he's played in during his career. And so to reach this milestone either tonight in Los Angeles against Oklahoma City or Thursday in Los Angeles against Milwaukee is a very great achievement.
Okay, well, and I agree. It's a fantastic achievement. Do you consider, based upon he breaks the record either today or Thursday, I think the Vegas line is, does that make him the GOAT, the greatest of all time?
Well, I thought that he was prior to this. Now, you'll get a lot of argument, and, they have a lot of background and facts to back it up about Michael Jordan. And to be totally honest with you, it wasn't until that long ago, I should say, it wasn't that long ago, that I consider Kareem Abdul-Jabbar the GOAT. You know, they talk about the titles. Well, Kareem won 5, Michael won 6. They talk about the MVPs. Kareem won 6, Michael won 6, and until either tonight or Thursday, Kareem was the all-time leading scorer. And what makes Kareem stand out is that if you remember, Kareem played in an era where there was no three-point shot. I think that he only attempted one three-point shot in his career. That these 38,000 plus points that he accumulated in his career came primarily by the greatest shot of all time, the only shot that's unblockable in all time, and that's the sky hook. But I think that just seeing LeBron at the level that he is now, at the age that he is now, and the number of years that he's played, and the number of games that he's played, to me, that makes him the GOAT.
Well, let's do it this way because we have different generations and eras.
Mm-hmm.
Who would you consider the GOAT in the 60s?
Oh, boy, that's a hard one between Chamberlain and Russell. I probably would have to say Russell because of the 11 titles. Although, you know, most people that are younger than you and I, anybody that's, I'd say, under the age of 50, never got to see the true greatness of Wilt Chamberlain and how his career evolved from a scorer, and then in the latter part of his career, he became a rebounder and an elite defender, a Hall of Fame type of rebounder, Hall of Fame type of defender, and still could score. But I would give the edge to Russell.
Okay, because of the rings.
Because of that, yes.
The 70s.
70s, I would say Kareem.
Okay.
Even though I was a huge Julius Erving fan, but it's Kareem.
80s.
80s, Magic, with Larry Bird as a close second. But to me, the 80s were the heyday of the NBA because the game then was maybe not as athletic as it is now, but you know, now they've made the rules where they basically legislated defense out of the game. And in the 80s, you had those teams like the 80s Pistons, like the Showtime Lakers, like the Celtics with the 3 Hall of Famers in Bird, McHale, and Parrish. And then you had the 76ers with Dr. J and Maurice Cheeks and Andrew Toney, and then adding later on Moses Malone on there. So to me, the 80s were the heyday. And then you had some of the other teams that were really good at that time that just didn't make the championships, like the Milwaukee Bucks when they had Marcus Johnson and Bob Dandridge, or the Seattle Sonics who won the title going into the 80s, the really good teams they had, and even the Knicks teams that they had in the 80s, but those teams could never get over the hump. But I would say as the 80s would be Magic for that decade, and then of course the 90s is Jordan.
Jordan in 2000s?
2000. So are we talking about what, like from 2000 to 2010?
Well, because we just did the 90s and didn't break it up.
So, okay, so we're going to say, so to me, the 2000s would have to be broken up into decades because from May 2000 to the first part of the 2000s, it was Shaq. Then you can make an argument for Kobe. Then there's LeBron. And the LeBron era, to me, began not so much when he was drafted, but I would say by his third year in the league, it was clear.
Yeah, there's no doubt
that he was the best player in the league.
You see, I remember in the 60s watching the NBA on ABC.
Right, on Sunday afternoon.
And a lot of those games actually were videotaped. They weren't live. And those were the days where if you went in for a layup and they threw you into the stands, you were lucky if you got called for a foul.
Right.
Okay. You're listening to Body Talk on No Static Radio. If you have any questions for Jeff Doggett, better known or also known as the Minister of all Cleveland Sports, you can call 216-939-5087.
I don't know how I acquired that title, but go ahead.
Well, let's share with the audience. This is one of the few gentlemen in the city of Cleveland who can dial or call in to ESPN, WKNR, and get on the radio all day long. It's one of the few people that does that. And they actually take their time and talk to Jeff and say, that was a great talk. Take Jeff. Before we continue on the sports realm here, tell everybody about Jeff Doggett.
Well, I was born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio. Grew up in the Lee Harvard area. Attended Cleveland Public Schools, Grace Mount Elementary, Charles Elliott, it was called junior high school back then, and the greatest high school in the world, bar none, Cleveland John F. Kennedy High School. And from there, I went to some small nondescript college in Columbus that most of the people listening probably never heard of before. It's called The Ohio State University. I majored in theater there, got a Bachelor of Arts degree in drama with a specialization in acting, did it professionally for a while. Columbus State Center, the world famous Karamu House in Cleveland, did things at the Playhouse, and also the Palace here in Cleveland as well as Cleveland State. As a matter of fact, I met my wife, Denise Cunningham Doggett, doing a play at the East Cleveland Community Theater in 1982. We married in 84. And then I got a calling to the preaching ministry in 1996. So I am a licensed ordained minister of the gospel. Got licensed to preach in 96, got ordained in 2009. I'm an associate minister at Providence Church of Cleveland and Euclid, one church, two locations, now located in Mount Pleasant area in Cleveland, and then our location at what was formerly known as the Manor, but now is called the Providence Life Development Center in Euclid. So always had an affinity for talk radio from way back when during the People Power days, WERE, I think started in 1971, and always listened to back then as a teen and called some of the shows, and then always loved talk radio. Been fortunate enough to be a guest on some of the people who had local talk shows on those stations. So,
Jeff, help me refresh my memory. Was Pete Franklin on WERE?
That's where he started, and then he went to 3WE, which is now WTAN.
Okay.
And the thing about him, what was unique, is that he would do the show Sportsline from 7 to midnight. And, no, from 7 to 11, I'm sorry. And then from 11 to midnight, some show called The World Tomorrow would come on. And then from midnight to 5 in the morning, he would do a completely different show, because Sportsline was all about sports, and he did a completely different show from midnight to 5 a.m. that talked about everything.
And thank you, Jeff. You're listening to Body Talk Radio program on No Static Radio. If you have questions for the Minister of all Cleveland Sports, he can be reached at area code 216-939-5087. Jeff, now let's make a segue into baseball really quick here. The Guardians, have packed up their tractor trailer and they're off to Arizona.
Yeah, that good year. I think the trucks got there yesterday.
Now, how do you think the Guardians are going to do this year?
Well, I'm excited about this year based upon what happened last year. You're really coming up my alley now, because baseball is and always has been my favorite sport. And, for a long time it was suffering here because the then Indians let's just be honest, they were horrible. And then, of course, when the 90s came along, Jacobs Field was built, and then they became one of the premier franchises in MLB. So I'm really excited about this year. The team is really set. There are really no positions up for grabs in spring training this year, so spring training can just be used to, get in shape, get ready for the grind of the season. I believe if they can stay healthy this year, which, that's always in question. But if they can stay healthy, especially within their pitching rotation and some of the prospects that they have on the minor league level, if they pan out to what is projected to be if you do suffer some injuries and the pitching rotation can come up and fill in. I think this is going to be a big year for them. We on the right side on Saturdays, the week before the Major League season starts, we do a baseball preview show. So that time I'll say my actual prediction of what I think they're going to do. But I'm really excited this year. But it's a cautious optimism too, because I have Cleveland fanitis. And for those of you that are listening to this program right now outside of the Cleveland area, Cleveland fanitis is that just when you think your team is about to really do something and take off, an OIC, an only in Cleveland moment happens, and you get disappointed and they don't do what you thought they were going to do.
I'm still on the Guardians, and you give me a short answer. Tito, for some
Best manager in baseball, by the way. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, that's all right. You finished my sentences. No, he's been anointed as the manager for life, it appears, with the Guardians, unless he decides he no longer wants to coach or manage. Or maybe, and I'm not wishing ill on the Guardians, or maybe they don't win enough games 2 years in a row. So Tito was the manager of the year in the American League. Do you think he should remain there forever?
Well, I think, he should remain as long as he, first of all, his health, because, he's had some health issues over the last few years. Last year, he was, he got through the season okay, but the 2 seasons prior to that, he had some very serious health issues. So as long as he's healthy and the team is productive, I see no reason. As I said, he is one of the major reasons why, in some people's eyes, the team overachieved last year. Nobody this time last year, including yours truly, I'll be honest, would have expected the Guardians to win the Central Division, get to the playoffs, win the first round of the playoffs against Tampa, and then take the Yankees in the American League Division Series to the limit before succumbing to New York. So a lot of that was because of the production of these young players like a Stephen Kwan, like Oscar Gonzalez, Jose Ramirez having an MVP type season, and then we didn't realize until the end of the season that he had been playing from June on with torn ligaments in his thumb. And after that same recruit, then the pitch to USC can say, look, you come here, you're going to be playing in the Big Ten. We can guarantee you at least 3 or 4 times in your career. Here you're going to be on national television. It's going to give you more exposure.